Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel Biology Made Easy. So in the previous lecture we studied about the electrocardiogram principle. We studied what are the electrodes that are attached to your skin and how they generate the leads, and we also looked at the electrical axis of heart. Okay, so today we are going to actually talk about a normal ECG curve, how it looks like, and what are the components of the ECG curve. So to start with, I'm going to draw the ECG curve here. Okay, so it's basically the electrocardiogram, a graph which is against your voltage and time. Time is usually in milliseconds because it's a very short period of time that it's existing, and the voltage is always measured in volts. Okay, now let's start. So a usual typical curve, the electrical activity of the heart produces a typical curve which somewhat looks like this. Okay, and then you have the D wave. Okay, so it exactly looks like this. Now we'll understand the components. Let's name the components first. This one here, this bump, this small little bump is called P wave. This one here is QRS complex. This one here is your T wave, and this is your U wave. Okay, so the first wave, which is your P wave, actually represents the depolarization and contraction of your atrium. Okay, so the first initial depolarization. Now when I'm saying depolarization, you have to understand that the SA node, the pacemaker, is generating its first electrical potential that is being contracted through the myocytes, which are the cells present in your myocardium. Okay, so this activity is happening in your myocardium. Also, you can find the link below in the description to reach my video of conduction pathway to understand as to how the conduction is happening and how the action potential is being generated. Okay, now let's again focus on this. This was the P wave, which represents the contraction of your atrium. Then lies your PR interval. Okay, this is the PR interval. This one here is the PQ interval or PR interval, it's called. This interval is represented by an isoelectric line because there is no electrical activity. The reason being the slow conduction of the action potential generated to the AV node. Okay, so here it was SA node has generated the first impulse and it is conducted to the AV node, and AV node, actually we have studied before also, AV node makes sure that the entire atrial contraction happens before the ventricular contraction begins. Okay, that's why there is no electrical activity. Then there is slight reduction, that is your electrical impulse is slightly reduced, okay, before the ventricular contraction, which is represented by this Q wave. Now following the Q wave, there is the peak of the ventricular contraction. So what does the R represents here? The peak of the ventricular contraction. Okay, the highest voltage given to the ventricles, and then followed by preceding S wave. Okay, here this is like this, sorry, S wave. Okay, and so this is called as QRS complex. QRS complex is entirely responsible for the ventricular contraction. And then again there is no electrical activity, zero activity in the heart. After the ventricular contraction, there is ventricular relaxation going to take place. So your ventricles are going to come in the normal state. So the fibers, the myocardial fibers, are going to be in the relaxed state. And then there will be repolarization of the myocardium. So this repolarization, okay, when I'm saying repolarization, so usually a cell is negative inside Okay, this is the resting membrane potential that I'm talking about. A resting stage of the cell, it is negative inside. There are more negative ions inside and more positive ions outside in the environment. So this is exactly reversed when depolarization happens. So again, when it comes back to its actual state, actual resting stage, it will be called as repolarization. So that repolarization is observed by the presence of this T wave. So T wave is representing the repolarization of the cells, myocardial cells. This U wave is the small successor of the T wave. However, the origin is still not known, that why does the U wave is formed, but it is considered to be a successor. So probably the reason could be the ventricular repolarization is T and the atrial one is U. So this is still a fact which is yet not known, but all we have understood here is this is the first depolarization wave. Okay, this is representing depolarization, and now we're going to talk about the time. This one here takes about 0.11 second. Okay, then the PQ interval takes about 0.12 seconds. QRS complex takes about very less time because it's a very short time, like it's a very short durational process, like it's a very fast process. Okay, because the ventricles contract like this. Okay, so it is about 100 milliseconds or 0.1 second. Okay, then there is ST segment, which is an isoelectric line. Okay, this ST segment is nothing but your ventricles and the entire heart relaxing, and it's about 320 milliseconds, or we can write it as 0.32 seconds. Then the T wave is about 0.16 seconds. Okay, so now we're going to sum up these time frames and understand whether it actually relates to the cardiac cycle. Okay, let's add these up. 0.11 plus 0.12 plus 0.10 plus 0.32 plus 0.16. Okay, it's 6 to 8 plus 2 10 1 11, and here it's 1 2 3 4 5 and 8.81 seconds that we have seen in my previous video where we have discussed the cardiac cycle. I will be putting in the description link. I will be putting in the link in the description below, and you can find it there. So we have discussed how these phases takes place in about 0.8 seconds, which is actually penned down in an electrocardiogram, and it's exactly 0.81 seconds that we are getting. And the waves also are formed relatively to the cardiac cycle. Okay, now let us try and relate the ECG curve with the conduction pathway. Okay, so this is the P wave generated during the depolarization of atrium. You can make a note, guys, because this will help you to remember the exact thing what is happening during this. So this is depolarization of the atrium, SA node generating its first impulse. Okay, SA node generating its first impulse, atrial contraction taking place, is represented by P wave. Okay, the second thing what we have is PQ interval. So this PQ interval is an isoelectric line because the electrical impulse generated here is being transmitted to the AV node. This slow conduction is reason behind the isoelectric line here. Okay, PQ interval, slow conduction of impulse to AV node. Now you have the QRS complex here. Now after the AV node reduction, this Q, the first wave, the Q, reduction in the electrical impulse at the AV node. Okay. Then you have R here, the conduction reaching the Purkinje fibers and contracting the ventricles. The peak is called as R. The peak voltage is R. So QRS complex is basically responsible for depolarization of interventricular septum and ventricles. After that, there is another isoelectric line. The ventricles that have contracted are relaxing now. Okay, so there is an isoelectric line, no electrical activity, zero electrical activity, nothing being sensed on the leads. Then repolarization occurring. Okay, so what is happening during the repolarization? The inflow of the potassium ion is now stopped and the outflow of the potassium ion has been begun. The cell which is negative inside, okay, and positive outside, environment outside is positive, this is known as the resting stage, is reattained. Okay, so during depolarization it was negative outside and positive inside. This is reversed and reattained. So T is that wave. U is again the successor of T, probably due to the atrial repolarization, which is still an unknown fact. Okay guys, okay, now this was about T wave. I will write it here, T repolarization of ventricles. Now we have understood the conduction and the waves are very much interrelated. Similarly, the phases of the cardiac cycles are interrelated, and also the time frame that the PQRSTU waves are showing us on the ECG is same as the time frame that the phases of the cardiac cycle are taking. Okay, so using any electrocardiogram curve, you can understand the abnormalities as well. How? The first thing, if a P wave is missing, it shows or depicts the atrial flutter or atrial fibrillation. Okay, which means irregular movement of the atrial contraction happening, and that is depicted by P. If the PQ interval or the PR interval, okay, is delayed, if the PR interval is delayed, it is representing a block at the AV node. It's an AV block. It also represents heart attack. So it could be first degree, second degree, third degree, depending on the AV block that is happening. Similarly, the elevation of the ST segment, okay, is going to represent that the elevation of the ST segment is going to represent the heart is not able to properly relax before its another contraction. Okay, so majorly the abnormalities are going to be diagnosed by the doctor. So it's always suggested that the ECG is read by a professional who's a cardiologist, so that they have a better understanding of this. But this was an overview that we needed to know at this level, and if you've liked my video, thank you so much for listening to me, and please do tune into my YouTube channel for the next videos. And in the upcoming videos, we are also going to talk about blood pressure and the problems related with the blood pressure. Also, we are going to talk about few cardiovascular diseases and how to keep your heart healthy. Thank you so much.